Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities such as new companies and potential business partners and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GridNet for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on public.com.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Women Motorsports. Joe San Diego here, along with Daniele Zeri from Racer, the girl behind the helmet. We have a lot to talk about today on the show, including what's going on with the W Series a little later on in the program. But first, a big thank you to our Patreon subscribers calling the show, Mark and Robin, for keeping us on the air. You too can invest in the Grid Network. So Patreon or a one-time contribution through Buy Me a Coffee. And Daniel, I know one of the big things we're following last weekend, the Iron Danes, Iron Lynx. What a heartbreak, 30 minutes away. I have not seen the Grid Network team collectively just in shock and disbelief with what happened.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Hi, and thank you for having me as usual for this week's episode. As you mentioned last weekend, it was kind of a big weekend for women in motorsport, because we had four teams or drivers fighting for the titles. We had Iron Dames, of course, at the final race of the European GT World Challenge Europe Endurance Series in Barcelona. Then we had Kerry Schreiner also racing for the title in GTC. Taylor Hagler in the end, IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge TCR class. And also Jamie Chadwick, obviously, she had her first match ball for rounding out the title in W Series, and we had two of them ending up winning the titles, and two of them having some kind of heartbreak last weekend. Chadwick will have another go in Kota. For Iron Dames, it really was a heartbreak in Barcelona. They had a really strong season, and we don't have to forget that it was their first season in GT World Challenge, which is a really competitive championship, really top level in GT3 in Europe. And still they did extremely well, of course, ending up winning in class in the 24-hour Spa, which was kind of an historic moment for the project. But obviously also coming into the Barcelona final weekend, that they had really good ambitions to clinch their first title. It would have been their first title, because of course they've been running at the top level in both GT3 and GTE championships around the world, but only this year they managed to win their first race, and then they were in contention for the title in Barcelona. They had their first pole position on Sunday morning with the all times put together in qualifying. And there was their first pole position in GT World Challenge, and so kind of hopes were high for the race. First stint was for Sarah Bovey, who had a pretty cautious start, I would say, because she dropped down to third in the very first laps. She really was cautious in avoiding mistakes and contacts, because they knew that the race was long and they really had to bring the car home. And ahead of the weekend, they were 9 points behind the Inception Motorsport McLaren. They gained 1 point after qualifying because in GT World Challenge Europe, they got 1 point for pole position. So they had 8 points to recover in the 3 hour race. By the way, pretty confident because in the first stages, the main rival to the championship in the gold class was spun around and had hit trouble in the first laps. So that car was kind of in towards the end of the field, while Sorbovi towards the end of her stint was back into second position in class. And then Michel Gatting did the second stint. She had very good second stint in the second part of the race, where she managed to get ahead of in class. She led the race for the remaining time in her stint before handing over to Rahel Frey for the last hour. Rahel had a strong start into her stint, but unfortunately, with 30 minutes approximately to the end of the race, they had a drive shaft failure, and that was it for the race. It was kind of a heartbreak for all of them because they really fought well throughout the season, and having your championship hopes ruined at less than half an hour to the end of the race was a tough one. But of course they will have they still finished second in the championship, which is kind of a big deal at the first season in such an important and competitive championship. But they will have some more chances, hopefully. Also finishing the season strong in WEC and European Le Mans Series will probably carry momentum after and bouncing back straight after such a disappointment. Hopefully they will have another strong weekend this weekend, because Dorian Pang is racing at Mugello in Ferrari Challenge. Also, she has the opportunity to round out the championship. So we will definitely have a look at Iron Dames, what you're doing in their last races in Portimao in the European Le Mans Series. There's going to be Bahrain for WEC, and then Dorian Pang will also do the Finale Mondiali World Finals for Ferrari in November.
A lot going on, and what a heartbreak considering how great of a season. But I think next year has to be looking really exciting for the potential that they may have in 2023. Now, one season that is wrapping up, we're getting close to it at least, the National Hot Rod Association. Just 3 races remaining, and the championship bout is really heating up all over in all their classes, starting with Top Fuel, the fastest one, Brittany Force. She was out in the second round after qualifying 5th. Leah Pruitt, 11th in qualifying. She was out in the first round. So right now, Brittany Force, she is 30 points behind the points leader, Justin Ashley. Leah Pruitt is 179 points and is almost on the verge of being eliminated. Over in Funny Car, Alexis DeJoria qualified 7th, facing J.R. Todd, who qualified 10th, but was upset when J.R. Todd went out there, defeated Alexis DeJoria. She is right now 6th place in the points, mathematically eliminated once the next race is started as well. You then go to Pro Stock. Erica Anders, she qualified 4th and went on to win the entire race weekend at Worldwide Technology Gateway. She has a 120-point lead over second place and is in control of really the championship in Pro Stock. The big reason, the winner of each event earns 100 points, runner-up 80 points, with 60 for anyone out in the third round, 40 points for the second round losers, and 20 points for the first round losers. So as long as she could at least get into that third round and earn 60 points, it's going to be very hard for anyone to catch up to her with so few races remaining. Texas Fall Nationals is the next race weekend for the National Hot Rod Association. Now, Daniel, I know one of the series we've been following, of course, the news last week about the W Series, what's going to happen if they're going to have another race weekend coming up. So far, we have not heard any official announcements or anything. And we heard that this was going to be the week where there would be an announcement in the event the series could not continue on. Now, we did see some outlets, including race fans, reported that Christian Horner said this would be a huge loss if the W Series. It would be devastating to have them go away. Overall, is it starting to look a little bit better? Do you feel like we will be seeing the W Series in the United States?
As you mentioned, they were probably doing an announcement in the case they couldn't go ahead. So I'm confident that the final two rounds, last one is a double header, so the final two weekends for W Series will go ahead as planned. All the drivers are basically saying that they will have the chance to finish the season. So I guess that is going to be the case, hopefully. But as you mentioned, it will be a big loss for also for Formula One. Remember, because Formula One is promoting projects consistently about gender equality and being more open and more accessible. So I believe that it would be kind of a shame for Formula One to let W Series do not finish the season. So in my opinion, they will also try to facilitate the season, the final two rounds of W Series. Hopefully, that is the case. But at the same time, I'm sure that Catherine Bonnemure was really busy in these couple of weeks to try to secure the funding for the series. Also, ahead of these final two rounds, they're also thinking in for next year. So we don't have right now official confirmations or any specific news or on the series going ahead or not going ahead. So I believe that we will have to to keep their word for as the calendar stands now, and watching what happens in the coming days.
Yeah, the coming days, it's going to be really interesting to see if we get such an announcement. Hopefully, we see them at the Circuit of the Americas and this championship can continue. With that said, though, championship continuing, it looks still very likely Jamie Chadwick can just go out there, get the championship done. She was really hard to beat last year at Texas and Coda. This year, much bigger lead, really in a good spot to break that championship and get it over. One thing we gotta mention though, Singapore bicycle visitor getting that win. But gotta really say, what an effort. Hadn't won since 2019 with the W Series. Of course, no season 2020, 2021. Some rough luck or just no luck. Even missed the race, I believe, the spawn round after that massive crash. So to see her get a win, how huge is that for everyone, and especially for her because we know where in the past she was doing the Richard Mill Racing program, not this year. Could this put her back on a route to sports car or maybe even more open wheels?
That's a good question. I believe that, as you mentioned, the bicycle was racing in LMP2 in the last couple of years before returning to W Series. Well, to a good level in W Series this year, because of course last year also she raced, but it wasn't really level that we used to seeing bicycle race in 2019 when she was the main rival to Jamie Chadwick in W Series. So I believe that probably her campaign in ELMS and then in WEC, she kind of that's just my speculation, but probably she was not. It was not that easy to jump from one car to the other. But now this year she has focused a little more on the W Series this season, and she was again really consistent. She's one of the few drivers that scored points consistently every weekend. I think only Jamie Chadwick had scored all weekends except for obviously Singapore, and also Sarah Moore. Sarah Moore is interestingly on a 10 race point scoring streak. So, and she's P11 in the championships now, but she has scored consistently for 10 races. So that's good. Good again, another good season for Sarah Moore. But as we mentioned, a very very good to see Biceker winning again on in W Series in Singapore. Very good weekend for her. She was also strong in qualifying in the rain. She didn't have the opportunity to have another lap after the rain really increased after the first couple of minutes. But she was again really strong in qualifying and starting second. Then had a great start, won the race. Had Marta Garcia that really in the dry condition didn't have the pace that she showed in the rain conditions. Another obviously the big news was Jamie Chadwick having a first DNF or in 3 years in W Series. First mistake for Jamie in over the course of 3 seasons in W Series. I would say that obviously her position in the championship kind of allowed for a riskier move. She got a little bit frustrated when she couldn't overtake Jessica Hawkins in the race. It was not obviously really easy to pass in a street circuit like Singapore. But yeah, I would say that not a big deal, because as you mentioned, she kind of has still 50 points of advantage to Biceker now coming into the last 3 races. She still will have another opportunity to wrap up the championship in Kota.
And one of the things you mentioned, Marta Garcia, of course, she got third place. Alice Powell, second place. One driver I feel has been showing a lot of consistency, Belen Garcia, fourth place. This year, she just seems to really stepped it up a level. Not getting the wins, but overall, really doing great out there on the track every week. Do you feel this could really be the launch pad of her consistency of maybe getting another opportunity elsewhere, or just assuming W Series comes back, now maybe being a championship contender?
Yes, well done in highlighting Belen's season, because as you mentioned, she's been really stepping up her game since last year. Well, she had a great debut last year when at Red Bull Ring in the very first race in W Series. She was close to claiming her first podium finish. It wasn't meant to be. She was fourth in that race, but then had some other positive races. But this year, really, she has been really consistent. She has been scoring really good points. She was on the podium for the first time in France at the French Grand Prix. Then had a very unlucky race just before the summer break in Cairo Ring, when she had a contact with a teammate, Maria Marti. But then really bounced back with another great result with a P4 in Singapore. She was interestingly P4 in all sessions in Singapore, in practice, in qualifying, and in the race. So another really consistent season for her. And now she's leading the drivers. We have 3 really strong Spanish drivers in W Series. So Belen, Marta, and also Nerea. All 3 of them are really at the top of the standings, and Belen is leading this really small classifying among them. And as you mentioned, that is possibly a very good opportunity for her to race in sports cars next year. Why not? I believe she is interested in trying something in sports car racing in prototypes, and so yeah, that would be possibly a good opportunity for her.
Sports car racing, that'll be huge for see her. Of course, second place finish, her highest finish. What an effort by Belen Garcia. Only 23 years old. A lot of racing potential up ahead. Now, before we get into some of the current races, gotta ask you, when it comes to sports car racing, we saw some big ones, as you mentioned a little earlier. Taylor Hagler, Kerry Schreiner. What an effort by them this year.
Absolutely. Taylor Hagler has really good season this year in IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge. Obviously, she was the reigning champion because she won her first season in the TCR class last year. And now she had the second title back to back. She became the first ever driver to win back to back championships in the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge, and also she was the second woman after Christina Nielsen to win back to back championships in IMSA. Nielsen won the 2016 and 2017 championships in the GTD. So it was another pretty historic moment for women in motorsport. And Taylor also, she was racing in GT3 last year in GT World Challenge America. She was the Rookie of the Year, runner-up in the Pro-Am Championships. So a really good driver, that both in the touring cars and in GT3, and she had a very strong season, also very consistent, a lot of podium finishes in the first part of the championship. That they won the race in last time out before the finale, and then they at Road Atlanta they had quite a difficult race, because they had a contact in the opening stages of the race when Taylor was behind the wheel. Then they had to pit for damages. They couldn't pit because there was another car from the same team in the pit slot, so they kind of had a self-imposed drive-through. But managed to get the car back in one piece, and they actually scored a podium with a P3. So really good end of the race for them, with a title. So and also interestingly, she will compete in the 8 Hour of Indianapolis this weekend, together with Erin Vogel, in the as she comes back to the Acura platform that she knows pretty well from last year. So another big weekend coming up for Taylor Hagler.
A big weekend for Taylor Hagler. Very exciting. Of course, that's going to be one of the races we're following, the 8 Hours of Indianapolis. What are some of the other races going to be following this weekend, Daniel?
Well, I'm here in Monza to follow the Formula 4 Italian Championship with Maya Veog and also Victoria Blocchina. So two really talented drivers. Blocchina is a rookie season here in Formula 4. We have 44 cars here on tracks this weekend, so another very busy schedule for Italian Formula 4, but also there will be Italian GT Championship, the Endurance Series, at its last round of the season, with Francesca Linossi, two-time champion Francesca Linossi, racing for in the Mercedes AMG GT3 here. She started the season in the Sprint Series and then switched mid-season to the Endurance Series. But she had 2 podium positions in the 2 rounds that she contested. So another really competitive driver. But we will have also the final round of the season in DTM Trophy with Sophie Hoffman. We will have the final round of the BMW M2 Cup with 3 drivers this weekend. We usually have 2 drivers, the 2 Kreuzpoiner twins, Alesia and Jacqueline. And now we will also have Patricia Salizzane. She's coming back to racing since after 2019. It was her last race, so she will have a little bit of a weekend to get back into the rhythm. But I think it's good that she's coming back. And of course, as I mentioned, Ferrari challenge Dorian Pan having the opportunity to wrap up the championship. Then TC America. VLN with Gabriela Gilkova coming back to racing after she had a couple of weekend stop in GT4 in Adam GT4, and now she's coming back at the Nürburgring for the NLS. So quite a busy weekend. Also the Formula 4 Championship, we will have, as I mentioned, the Italian one, but also the US one. So we will follow some kind of different forms of racing throughout Europe and the US.
And we encourage everyone to visit the website Racers Behind the Helmet. I saw there following all the racers. You click on the link and follow the race live. Get the results as it happens. And we want to thank everyone for tuning in to today's weekend's episode of Women in Motorsports. For Daniele Zeri, Racers Girl Behind the Helmet, I'm Joe Samaniego. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time, and enjoy the races.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform, public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GridNet for your free $5 to invest and Start investing and networking on public.com.